Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our regularly scheduled Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority meeting for 3:30 p.m. today, Tuesday, July 22nd. And I'll call this to order. And would you please call the roll?
Yes, I will. Commissioner Sullivan. Here. Commissioner Gitlin.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson. Here. And Commissioner Hawley.
Here.
Chairman Inia.
I'm here, thank you. We'll start with public comment, and any member of the public may address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter that's on or off the agenda. And after receive recognition from the chair, please give your name and if you're a city or county resident, and comments are limited to 3 minutes. Is there any public comment this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on from public comment. And we have a report from the Solid Waste Task Force. Is there a member here today? None, I don't see any. Okay, then we will move on from there. Consent agenda, that's item 2 and 2.1. Approve the minutes of the regular session from Tuesday, June 25th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. It's unanimous. We'll go to item number 3, which is our director's report, and he has 5 items there. Kevin?
All these items are provided for your information. I'll assume that you read them. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions from the board on items 3.1 through 5? Commissioner Wilson, go ahead.
I did have a couple questions, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to contact you early for the meeting, but I was curious on the credit card fees.
That's 3.2? 3.2?
I'm on 3.2, and I just was looking at your monthly credit card fees are $627 on approximately $17,000, and I was figuring that probably about 3.6%, 68% is what I figured. And I just wanted to note that, you know, at Costco, you can get your credit card rates for 1.67. So I felt that your the fees for credit cards are very high. And I thought that you could possibly look into that. You could about cut those in half.
Okay. I'll talk to you later about that.
Yeah.
Thanks for the tip.
And the other thing I'm noting was the difference, again, on the current, the actual budget and then what was budgeted. And it looked to me like there was about, taking the grants out, there was about $250,000 less that was taken in than what was budgeted. And I believe part of that was from the sludge. I remember you said it was
Which
about...
report are you looking at? I'm sorry.
I'm looking at 3.2 on page 2.
Under franchise fees and code enforcement at the top of the page?
Mm-hmm. It's just about $262,000 difference. And so what I'm noting is that basically, well, further on in 3.5, it's the amount from the, let's see, how do I say this now? So the amount from the franchise fee is down, but yet the amount at the gate is up. I noticed that. I didn't know why, and then I'm just wondering if you could just give me a reason on again, why the it's about $250,000 less than was budgeted. I just don't get it all. I know there's a section from the sludge, losing that income.
You're talking about the franchise fees?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's at the very, on your revenues, your total revenues. I probably didn't ask my question very clearly. Well, I'm just trying to get an idea.
Let me take them one at a time. The franchise fees has a year-to-date actual of $220,975. That doesn't include the payments for June yet. So there was, because that check was received after the end of the fiscal year, so that was an account receivable.
I thought about that, but then I thought for last year, June must have been included for the same reason. it might be too detailed to bring up at this point, but I'm just noticing it's quite a bit
Well,
of difference.
It's, that's one explanation, that about $19,000 in franchise fees was received after this report was posted, so the actual franchise fees will be in the range of $240,000. It'll be higher. And similarly with the revenue received from the transfer station fees, if you look at your, the charge accounts, as of the end of June, there's about $200,000 in charge accounts, so that revenue still has to come in. Payments on charge accounts are still accounts receivable.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to go into a little bit more detail on my question, because again, I'm assuming that every time when the year ends, you know, June of the previous year would have been included. But those were my questions. The credit card fee, I feel you could probably get that lower. And also, I think that was it, the credit card fee.
Thank you. Any other board comment? on those
Yeah,
items?
with regard, I noticed the credit card fees too, and Kevin, isn't it an automatic perfunctory function of the bank holder, the bank, to lower the fee the more you use it? I thought it's kind of like it's a formula. Once you swipe it so many times, the rate goes down. It should be automatic. That might be a simple bookkeeping call that the bank did not acknowledge, because I think you're getting a lot of swipes on the credit cards there, and you may have already exceeded the limit, and the bank is just not aware of that. You know, these things slip through their cracks too. So perhaps a phone call to the bank, which would automatically drive it down as an immediate credit. Oh, I'm sorry, you know, we've had this happen before, and then, you know, you don't bring it up to their attention, then they conveniently forget. So sometimes it's an automatic thing. It should be not something that's negotiated. Once you use it so many times, then the rate proportionally goes down. That's my understanding. And I don't know if anybody in
Yeah,
retail, is that how it works?
No, you really have to shop around for different rates.
Oh, is it? So it's a
yeah.
fixed rate
Yeah.
forever then?
Yeah, so different banks have different rates, and some of them have a flat 20-cent per transaction plus a fee, others have a percentage. It's just probably twice as high as it needs to be. I just shop around.
I just have a quick question. The Del Norte Code Enforcement dash blight, this is on section 4, is $7,711. Is that what it costs to dispose of blighted materials? Is that what that represents? There's
3.4?
yeah,
You're looking at the charge?
it's page 1 under section 4, AR aging summary. It's what?
Yeah, there's two
Well, that's just 960.
two charge accounts lines that are the county, and they're two separate charge accounts, and they do.
Oh, I see.
They do owe us money.
I'm sorry, he was just showing me that my eyes were being tilted, I guess.
I have to use a
The-
ruler.
the-
I have to use a ruler to line
The
these up.
7711 represents what? What happened? What is?
You're talking about the Del Norte County Public Nuisance Abatement, $7,638?
I think I'm talking about the nuisance abatement. Yeah. What does that represent? What is it what it costs us to dispose of materials?
No, that's a charge account that the county nuisance abatement officer has. And I believe that one was related to a grant that the county got to do some cleanups.
Okay.
And I have that highlighted in pink on my form because I don't know why they're 90 days overdue, but we will follow up on that.
It occurred to me it was a big amount. So okay.
It's less troubling than other accounts because we believe we'll get paid.
We know where they are.
Yes, we do.
And
Thank you.
if you're in the aging one, I was curious, there's one here that's over 90 days for $58,000. It's TRKLA. I didn't know what that is.
That's us. Klamath Transfer Station, Gasky Transfer Station. Those are the disposal charges for the remote container sites.
And it's just transferred on the books, not monthly, but
That's
how often?
accumulated,
It's accumulated over
that's
the...
accumulate, this is the June report, so that's the accumulated disposal cost for Gaskia and Klamath.
$58,806?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for the board on items on the director's report?
Where are we at? You guys got the national park here from 3157, that's over 90 days.
Yeah.
Is that pretty typical, or is that?
Federal government is slow sometimes, and I'm not sure what the specific reason on that is, but in general, they've been a reliable customer. We believe they'll pay us.
And I just only had one other question, and that was under the claims approved. It had 3 different months for the phone bills in here, January, May, and June. I try and pay my bills monthly. I just was curious why they were all,
Old Frontier.
yeah, back to January, and there's 3 in 1 month. I just didn't know why.
Yeah, there's 2 on,
3.3.
there's 2 on June 5th, and there's 1 on June 28th.
There's one from January,
Oh, yeah, there's 1 from January.
and there's one from May and June.
My recollection is that we had a dispute on the January bill. They had made an error. It took a while to get it corrected.
Okay. Any other questions?
Well, since we're going into the detail, my
Sure.
only other question on that was, I was looking at that, it's the pad fee for, it was 800 and, what's that at now? $800, I thought was high.
Oh, you're talking about US
US
Bank.
Bank, 82202.
Total
Oh, yeah,
pads,
822,
signature
yeah,
pads.
Is that for credit cards?
Yeah, the signature pads for the credit cards. It's a little electronic thing on a cord that we pass out to the drivers to sign for the credit cards.
They got you, because I just bought one for Ocean World, and it's $300 for the pad and $100 with the pin thing. They need to use a debit, so.
Ours has to be used outside and
Uh-huh.
under rainy conditions, so it's an extra heavy-duty one.
Uh-huh.
I actually think that might be more than one.
Those 2 of them.
It's 2 of them? Okay.
That might explain that.
They get a lot of wear and tear because they're outside.
And they are replacing, I guess within the next year, the credit card machines are going to kind of go to accept the smart card.
Oh.
So I just, not to put any big money out into those machines, because pretty soon we're going to have to get rid of all of our old ones and go to a new form of credit card machine, which will be another investment in equipment.
Okay. Any other questions? Any public comment on the director's report? Not, I'll take a motion to approve. Oh, it's
Just
information, we don't
information,
have to
no.
approve.
No
Okay,
vote
that sounds good.
required.
Okay, that completes the director's report. I see Mr. Nunn is here. We went over solid waste task force. Did you have anything you wanted to say about the meeting? Okay. We'll move on then to discussion and action items. Number 4 is landfill for a post closure. And 4.1 is a discussion and possible action regarding the status of landfill repairs and a letter from Gino Yeka, thank you, on a Cal Recycle regarding the June 24th inspection.
I've asked Ted to provide the overview on these items.
Okay.
So Gino Yekta is with Cal Recycle, which is the government agency in Sacramento that oversees all things related to landfill and solid waste. And so he came up for an inspection, which I escorted him on to look at the landfill repairs and how they were executed, and generally he was pleased with how they were done. The follow-up was that he asked for a drawing to be sent to him of the perimeter gas wells, which I've sent, and I have not heard follow-up from that, but there's always the possibility that they'll get around to saying further on that. But they are the agency that looks over our shoulders, and they seemed pleased with how the repairs were done.
These were the emergency ones for the winter that we had to do?
Yes, well, they were more severe this winter, but they're really never an emergency in that It happens every year. We always have erosion. We always have to fix it. This year it was a little bit more severe than years prior.
Any questions from the board? Any public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to 4.2, and that's a discussion regarding the status of work done by EBA Engineering.
This one's good news, for a number of reasons, but bottom line is that this landfill gas heat input capacity report is something that's required by the North Coast Air Quality Management District. And what they're trying to look at is where we fall in terms of regulations and if anything additional needs to be done. Our landfill is passively venting the landfill gas, so it's going into the atmosphere, and the methane that is a major component of landfill gas is a more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, and so the Air Board tends to be a little bit more firm in how that's regulated. And many landfills are required to capture, process, and deal with the landfill gas in a more aggressive way than we've been required to up to now. But the bottom line is that at this point, they were trying to figure out whether or not we were above or below the threshold, which is 3 million BTUs per hour. And what they found is, in analyzing that question 3 different ways, we were below that threshold by a favorable margin. So I believe that once this is submitted and accepted by the Air Quality Management District, that probably we will not have much further action from them until and unless there's a change in law or regulation, which is always a possibility. But bottom line, I think EBA has done a fine job for us, and I would recommend that you approve the payment of their latest invoice in the amount of $7,155.22.
Okay, that's an action item. Is there any comments from the board?
I have a comment. I noticed in here that they said that this is not necessary if it's below 450,000 tons, and yet they said that our landfill is 222,000 tons, which is well below 450,000 tons.
They did an analysis that was presented to the board earlier, and we are above the 450,000 ton threshold. Not by much, but by enough that we can't really reasonably argue that we're below it. Where did you see that?
It's on page 2. It says they researched, let's see, there are 222,000 tons. For some reason, I don't know what
what they're saying is that between the period of 1977 through 2004, they ended up with 222,900, and that wasn't the entire period that the landfill was receiving.
I noticed the report started, though, it said year open 1977 for some reason in their report.
That was the first year that it was permitted, but it was active prior to that, is my understanding. Of course, this predates me, so I only know what's in the paper record.
But they only used the 222,000 tons.
I have another report which I could bring back to the board if you'd be so inclined, but it did show that we were above that 450,000 threshold, and if that's confusing, well, mark that. We'll make sure that that paragraph's a good deal more
Yeah,
clear.
I had called about the tonnage earlier. I was kind of confused by that. But it's good news. I mean, so therefore we are not required to meet that AB 32, and so that'll save the county a ton
The
of
Air
money.
Board has a good deal of discretion in this point, so we'll see. Until the Air Board says there's nothing further to do, I don't know what the Air Board's going to say.
I'll have to correct Commissioner Wilson, it will save the community a ton of money.
What did I say?
County.
The county.
Oh, the community.
I knew what you
There we
meant.
go.
I knew
Okay,
what you
okay.
meant.
Everybody.
Both in, let's
Yeah.
put one thing
And as
under
far
the
as,
bus.
and the BTUs were well below, 50% below what they're even concerned about, so.
Did you have a comment, Commissioner Hawley?
Just a very minor one. The amount on the agenda says 7155.22, and I believe it's 7150.22. It's a $5 difference. I want to make sure
Oh,
you
dear,
catch that.
okay.
Okay.
Good eyes, Mr. Commissioner Holly.
Any other?
Ted, I have a question.
Yes.
Is, if I may, Chair Nia, is this matter going to be actionable at the North Coast Unified Air Quality Management Board meeting? Is this going to be, do we need to take further action there? Because I sit on that board. They're not meeting in August. The next meeting is September. Is this going before this board?
Not that I'm aware of it. It goes through staff first, And I don't know what their process is and how things percolate up to a board decision level. So
Well, we'll follow up with them.
My role is to submit it to staff and then to
Right.
work with them.
And then after this is, it's a done deal after this, then? It won't come back in any form of other intervention? You're not sure?
Exactly, like with Cal Recycle, like with the Regional Water Quality Control Board, they're regulatory agencies that look over our shoulder, and they have to comply with a whole different set of laws and regulations and governing boards than we do. And so they're generally more aware of what rules they're following than I am. And so I wait for their guidance as to what is our next step.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any public comment on item 4.2 regarding the work of EBA Engineering? Seeing none, the motion is moved and seconded to approval the pay of $7,150.22. Would you please pull the vote?
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes?
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Gitlin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Chairman Enia?
Yes. So that passes. 4.3 is a discussion and possible action regarding the groundwater investigation work plan for the landfill.
This is also generally good news in that it is a real documented acknowledgement that if we are able to show what we hope we're able to show with the installation of 2 new wells out at the landfill, if we can demonstrate that it's extremely unlikely that we're impacting the domestic water supply, that they would lower us from a threat complexity rating of 1A, which is as bad as you can get, to a 2A, which would be a much lower annual waste discharge requirements fee. And so essentially this is a formal acceptance of our groundwater investigation work plan, which was presented before the board last meeting.
Questions from the board?
Yeah,
Mr. Hawley?
I did have one question. It appears that we enter the year with the higher threat management level, right? And that they're gonna credit us, or what are they gonna do if it turns out the way we want it to turn out?
Well, they temporarily reduced our threat complexity rating so that would free up some resources in order for us to install these new wells and to go through the work that we've done so far. And so if it shows what we want, then they'll keep that. However, they have also implied that this next fiscal year, it might go back up until we've demonstrated what we hope to demonstrate.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know at what point we pay our bill, but is it at the end of 13, 14?
They usually assess the fee in December or January. So
Okay.
we're still scrambling to try to get this done before they assess the fee in hopes that they'll permanently reduce it for us.
It's always more difficult to get it back, is what I'm saying.
I understand, but it is, they don't like it very much if you don't pay at all.
All right.
They send you letters. They'll give us a credit.
Okay. Did you have anything else on that, Mr. Ward? No?
No actions required at this time.
Okay. Is there any public comment on that 4.3, groundwater investigation? Okay, we'll move on to 4.4, and that's a discussion and possible action regarding the annual stormwater report for the landfill. Mr. Ward?
This is something that the board should be aware of, that we have to do both for the landfill and the transfer station, which is as a later agenda item. But I'll cover the concept for both of them, which is there's a general industrial stormwater permit that's issued by the Regional Water Quality Control Board that covers all manufacturing and industrial activities and large land use activities like landfills, scrap metal yards, auto scrap yards, those sorts of things. And we have to submit these annual reports, which are quite detailed, and one of the requirements that affects me personally is that you have to go out and collect these samples when it's really lousy weather. They want to wait until after it's rained an inch, and then when it's really coming down, that's when you go out and you get the sample. But that's what the rule is, so that's what we do. And so we gather that information, and then come time for the annual report, we wade through each of these electronic files, which takes a day or two, because they're fairly complicated questions, and we want to make sure that we're accurate in our reporting.
Any board questions on the annual stormwater report? No?
It did seem, they asked a question on the report if it had been collected within the hour that it was filled. So I thought that was kind of funny around Del Norte County here, how
And you have adequate rain gear, right?
we get out there.
I do. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thought I'd ask. Any public comment on 4.4, the annual stormwater report? Seeing none, we'll go to 4.5, and this is the discussion and possible action regarding the semi-annual groundwater surface water report.
This one is both more comprehensive, and we have to do it twice a year. And the board has directed us to pursue landfill insurance, and this is one of the things that is required as part of that landfill insurance application. So it does give a pretty good overview and summary of what's going on at the landfill, what are we doing in terms of water quality monitoring, and what impacts are being detected. The impacts are not severe, but they're absolutely detectable, which isn't, again, a huge surprise because there is no baseliner to the landfill. And so we continue to do this reporting, and we do it under the monitoring and reporting requirements that are associated with our waste discharge requirements issued by the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board. So all of these monitoring and reporting requirements are in writing and could be potentially updated at some point by the Regional Water Quality Control Board.
Any discussion among board members? Yes.
It's required by insurance, you said?
As part of the insurance application, which Director Hendrick has already told you is a quite detailed application, they do ask for specifically this report. And so we need to complete this report before we could complete the landfill insurance application.
But it is also required by the regional water
First
quality.
and foremost by the Regional
Okay.
Water Quality Control Board, yes.
Okay, that was my question.
No other questions? Any public comment on the semi-annual groundwater report?
And just for your information, each of these reports takes me about a week to compile.
Yes, I can tell by those graphs they're difficult.
I just need to ask one quick question. The graphs are really interesting to me, shallow versus deep wells and that kind of thing. But once in a while you hit a year where there's a huge spike. If we're not continuing to put stuff into the landfill, why would there be a spike and then it dissipate again?
It's a good question, and I don't always have a clear answer. Sometimes we have some guesses as to what it might be, but sometimes it just happens. And keep in mind that, of course, the landfill is there every day of the year, and we only sample it 2 times out of the year, or in terms of surface water more frequently. But at any one of those points, you might get a hit that 6 months ago wasn't there, but if you were to sample more frequently, you might see more of a trajectory as to it rising and falling. But the answer isn't always clear just from looking at the data.
I
Thank
thought once in there it mentioned that it was possibly the PVC glue when they had put in a new well.
Oh, really?
There was a test right after that spiked. So
I'm
different
glad that you noticed that, but
reasons.
yes, that was a learning experience for me, that I did put in the new well, and then we had a spike in toluene, and I thought, PVC glue. So it allowed us, at least in that circumstance, to have an explanation, but other times we have hits that are more difficult to explain.
Thank you.
I would, you know, again, because of this requirement to reduce us from a 1A to a 2A about the residential houses, I just was looking at these kind of the
Schematics?
topo maps that
Topo.
show elevation, and I just was curious whereabouts the houses are on there, because it kind of, you know, what are their elevation, and I don't know if that affects the water underground, and, you know, which way it's flowing. I can
Right.
kinda click on
I have a good answer to that one, in that if you look at the figure 1, which follows the text and precedes the graph, it's an aerial photo of the landfill, and it shows where the property boundary is. And those stars just outside the landfill property, those are the residential wells.
Oh, okay.
And so if you look at the following pages, you'll see landfill maps of the direction of flow, the gradients, the underground topography of the groundwater, both for the deep wells and the shallow wells. And you'll see that nearest to the eastern border of the landfill, it is tending towards that eastern border, but it's also tending somewhat southward.
Yeah.
And so part of the motivation for us to install those 2 additional wells, as indicated on figure 1, is to try to get a better idea of exactly how much it's moving to the east and how much it's moving to the south right in that area.
And do you have an elevation on those houses right there? Is it a little bit higher?
They are, in terms of the ground, they are elevated above the landfill, above the landfill property line.
So just the water table?
But it's a little hard to say exactly where things are going. Plus, the residential groundwater wells are not installed with the same degree of accuracy and engineering as the groundwater wells at the landfill. And so the information that we could gather from those residential wells, even if we could sample them, would not be of the same quality.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Does anyone have any public comment on the semi-annual groundwater service? All right, seeing none, thank you for that. We'll move on to item 5. And item 5 is a discussion of possible action regarding approval change order number 4 to implement a request from Ecology Del Norte to change the current green waste collection service days, which are currently Monday through Friday, to 1 day per week on Wednesday. Kevin, did you have a comment on that?
Direction was given at the last meeting. This is a change order to implement the request for them to not collect yard waste every day. So staff recommends approval of this.
In addition, it also implements the service of a temporary brush cart, which Recology had suggested they would like to offer. And so we thought, as long as we were dealing with brush, that we might as well put that in the same change order.
Okay. Any comments? Go ahead, Mr. Gitlin.
Ted, how many customers are we talking about? About 70? Is that what the number is?
I think Tommy
And
said
I see
about 100.
Tommy, you're
Come on
back
up,
there.
Mr. Sparrow.
Is it 130? I don't know if that's a...
38.
138 is what he
Okay,
said.
138, and as long as you're up here, Tommy, is that a growing number, or is it a seasonal number?
It's a pretty stable number.
Is it a stable number?
It does go down during the wintertime.
Yeah, because it occurs to me everything grows 4 or 5 months out of the year, and I find myself going over to the transfer station with green stuff a lot, and I'm wondering if this is, does it spike up and then just...
Typically, the way we do it, Roger, the customer base stays pretty stable. During the winter time, they go on temporary stop.
Okay.
So, you know, there's no service, but the customer's still there. And one thing I'd like to add, if you guys decide to approve this, the effective date of this will be 10/2, and every customer that would be effective in a negative way or inconvenience for that month, we're going to give those customers that month of October free for their green waste.
Oh, good.
So, did you have another question?
You know, I just wanted to get the numbers, 138, and you feel you can do this in one business day? Pick up
Oh, we
130? This
do.
is not a difficult challenge?
No, we do 500 to 700 a day.
Okay, so it's going from 5 to 1. It's not going to be killing you guys, and at the same time, I mean, they're spread around.
Yeah, it's spread around.
But it's not going to be a challenge to you to cover that, okay?
Nope.
I'm clear on that, thanks, Chair.
Okay. So the 64-gallon one, it will be $11.88 per month. Is that what that says?
That is a temporary rate, if I'm
Oh,
not...
temporary, yeah, temporary.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and that'd be collected 1 day a month, a week now. It's one.
The temporary rate would be a 7-day service
Oh,
collection. I mean, it would, if you just wanted to do a real quick cleanup, like our temporary events.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
okay. All right, is there any other questions of the board?
No, I appreciate your comments about giving the customers a little bit of a break, because
Well, it's going to
similarly, your
inconvenience.
costs are going to go down a little
And
bit,
this
so
would,
they're
you know,
getting something back.
the people that are Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday will have a free month of service for the month of October.
Tommy, do you get, I mean, have you guys, obviously it's a newer service, but do you get, have you guys done an analysis of during the course of the year when you get higher spikes of people using that?
Mhm. And it starts in March.
It's
And
pretty
it-
much when,
Well, when the
when we
rain-
get some sun or
It's
less
just,
rain.
it follows the weather.
Got it.
You just
Okay.
look at the weather. That's what it does.
Okay, all right. Any other board questions? Thank you, Tommy. Any public comment on this change from Monday through Friday service to 1 day a week service on Wednesday? On Wednesday.
I
Okay.
should point out that the change order does not restrict Recology to Wednesday. So if the number of customers was to expand in brush and they needed to go to 2 days of collection, as long as they got it collected every week, then they would still be in compliance with the change order.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Been moved to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Sullivan, seconded by Commissioner Gitlin. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, 5-0. Okay, we're at the transfer station items now. Item number 6.1 is a discussion and possible action regarding a public hearing set for 3:45 July 23rd, so we're about 20 minutes late, for final adoption on ordinance 2013-01, and that's establishing the rates to provide a public scale services at the Del Norte County Transfer Station. Is that Kevin or Ted?
This is the continuation of the item that this board has heard, and it has been heard by the Board of Supervisors and the City Council as well. All have approved the language in this ordinance, and so now under the new revised JPA rules is the opportunity for the board, this board, to finally adopt this ordinance. Previously, we are still waiting for, we would wait for direction from this board to actually start doing the training and incurring costs to do this service, because our understanding was that as long as there's a private company offering public scale services, that we're good with that.
That's correct.
And so if there's any change, then we'll do that, but by adopting this ordinance, essentially, we're ready to go, and we can implement that service in as brief a period as possible.
Is that still the concurrence of our board? Yes, Mr. Gitlin?
You know, Ted, I had a question on this, because when I originally moved to activate that scale, it was always my understanding that it was a backup only. It wasn't going to be implemented, because quite frankly, I think that Hambro WSG is doing a fine job and should be continue to be the primary source of weighing our vehicles. I felt that it was necessary to introduce this option just in case, and I say that there was going to be the scales were down, or there was a mechanical problem or something, so that our people wouldn't have to drive down to Eureka to have their vehicles weighed. So has this thing, and again, I'm all right with it. I'm just curious to know, has this thing manifested itself into actually you're going to be competing with Hambro?
No,
or
this
is it just a backup?
It's just a backup.
Okay,
like
so
you
that has
said.
not changed.
It's exactly what you said.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
what, I just want to make sure I'm clear that
Page 2.
when I heard ready to go, you're ready to go to back up Hambro WSG in case they can't.
Waiting for direction from this
I
board to
got
do
it.
so.
Actually, it's, if I might, it's in page 2, paragraph 4 in the actual ordinance. The authority does not intend to provide public scale service until and unless such services are no longer offered by any private company located in Delaware.
So we have it in there. Okay.
So it's covered by the
I'm clear, thank
Any
you.
other board questions? I wanted to tell you at our council meeting, you were there, but for the rest of the board, a gentleman stood up that was very much in favor of it, and I learned something also. He said that there's a new law regarding pickup trucks, and that if you have a camper shell on them, they're considered commercial vehicles now, and that they have to be weighed when you buy them. And so he was happy that there's going to be a backup scale, because the closest to go, I think he said Arcata. Is that, maybe he said Eureka. So anyway, there could be more use to the scales now in the county, because if it's going to require all pickup trucks to be weighed upon sale.
California law?
He said it was a California law. I haven't heard of that, but said they require commercial plates now. So that was news to me. Any public comment on item 6.1 regarding public scales that we're going to use as a backup?
You need to open the public hearing.
That's what I meant. I meant public hearing. Public hearing's open. Is there any comment at our public hearing on providing this service if no other business has that in this county? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to us for discussion or action.
I'll move to approve ordinance number 2013-01, establishing this service as a backup to the existing service.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Gitlin and seconded by Commissioner Hawley. All those in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0.
Would you like to pull a vote? It's an ordinance.
Yes, it's an ordinance. We should pull the vote. Please do that.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Gitlin?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Chairman Ania?
Yes, thank you. Item 6.2 is a discussion and possible action regarding the approval of change order number 18, implementing a request from Wes White, the CEO of Hambros WSG, for a modification of the contract requirements for a performance bond. Kevin, did you want to speak to this?
Ted's got this one too.
This is a change order that we were directed to prepare by the action at the last meeting. So it just modifies the bond requirements, and we've had a legal analysis indicating that that's probably just fine.
Is there any board comment?
Is it, yeah?
Yes, did you have any comment?
No, it looks good.
Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment on item 6.2 regarding the approval of the change order? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll move for the modification of performance bond requirements for Hambro Waste Solutions Group.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. Item 6.3 is a discussion and possible action regarding the annual stormwater report for the Del Norte County Transfer Station. So earlier we talked about the landfill.
Exactly.
So we're up to the transfer station.
Very similar report, many fewer locations to actually sample, but we do sample those 3 locations per this requirement and report accordingly. And again, this takes a couple days, and I get to go out in the wet and miserable and collect the data, but that's part of the job, and I'm happy to do it.
Any board comments on this item? Any public comment on this item 6.3?
I had a question.
Sure.
I was looking through some of the testing that was done here, and it points out some of it goes to the lab, and some of it is done, I guess, in-house. It's done by yourself.
By hand meter, yes. A handheld meter is used to measure pH, total dissolved solids, the other
Okay.
things.
And have you looked into getting any testing? I mean, how expensive is the testing for this? And have you looked into doing any of the testing in-house?
We've explored the possibility of working with the lab for the Crescent City wastewater treatment plant, and there are challenges in terms of the things that we need to measure and have data on have a specific turnaround time. Some of those things we can do with handheld meters. The others are not the kinds of things necessarily that the wastewater treatment plant generally samples for. And because we don't necessarily know exactly when we're going to do it, it becomes a difficult thing to try to arrange with them to do, because it's raining now, then we need the analysis done the following day. So the North Coast Laboratories is the only professional lab in the region, and so it really is kind of the only option for many of these tests.
I, as a business, used to send my water out for testing there too, and I made a move to purchase my own incubator and buy different types of testing kits. So then that saves me getting it on a bus or freighting it down there within a certain amount of time, and then getting it back, as well as the fee. So that was, I just would be curious to know, you know, if some of these things could be tested with a kit in-house, and if that would be some cost savings. That would be my question. To
Okay.
look at,
Mary, would you be able to meet, Mary, over here, would you be able to meet with Ted and I, and maybe you can describe what you've done, and we'll explore that with you?
yeah, I think it'd make your life easier, and I think save some money.
Sure.
Well, I know this has come up before, because the city had mentioned that you guys just not have the equipment, or are you that far off where you could actually get the equipment? Because we're spending 30 grand a year.
Actually, I think there's 2 reasons. And one of them is we've had a difficult time staffing the lab because of the salaries the city pays. And I think once we get that established, city manager's working on that, the city can look into what equipment's needed to do that job.
I also used to take my,
To the city?
testing to the city, and then they stopped taking it.
They stopped taking it because of the staffing, I would imagine, right?
Yeah,
I think
they didn't want
that's
the
been the problem.
responsibility.
It seems like it came up during our recent budget workshop.
It did.
And you know, we're still going to keep looking at it if we can find the proper personnel and see what needs to be done.
Yeah, they have to be licensed a certain way, and it's difficult to get people up here. That's why Arcata is the only one in the region. You know, it's, but we're working on that. Good, thank you for asking about that. Okay, then, that is a, you want to accept?
No
this?
action is required.
No action is required. Okay, so we'll move on now to General Solid Waste Authority matters, and we're on item number 7.1. And this is the discussion and possible action regarding a report from the subcommittee discussing available options to execute the responsibilities currently administered by the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority.
This information is provided just for your information only. The committee hasn't made any recommendations at this point, and I expect we'll have to have at least one more meeting, maybe more.
And these are the draft minutes that we have up here from the July 15th meeting.
Right.
Is there another meeting date set yet? Or-
No, we have not set a date yet. It's, people have been pretty good about trying, but it is a challenge getting everybody on the same day.
Yes. Any comments from the board on this item?
Yes, are we able to have some input at this point regarding what goes on in these meetings? And if so,
Yes.
what I would be interested in is a trend analysis. And personally, for me to wrap my head around the figures in the budgets is that I've started comparing year to year so I can analyze a trend, and I've pulled out revenues and expenses and mandatory expenses separate from JPA expenses. And I kind of have a format that I would like to pass off to the committee that possibly, again, it's just so hard to pick a point in time and make a decision on it. It would be good if we could do like a 10-year projection in the future with all of the consumer price increases, you know, and if we go back in time and we look and see how, you know, the budget is going like this, keep going up, and the tonnage is which direction that's going, what's it going to look like in 10 years? I mean, I think that's a fair question that we need to look at based upon previous history. So if I were going to analyze, you know, a business, I would look for a trend as opposed to a point in time. And I would hope that the committee could ask staff to help prepare. I certainly would be available to go and pull some figures on all the previous years and plug them into just, I've basically taken a lot of the figures that Kevin had provided about the budget, and I've plugged them into a revenue and expense, just kind of a one-page sheet here where they bulked a lot of them that were in the same category, and then I have something to compare to. So I'd really like to see that done, and
Okay.
I don't know how to go about asking to have that.
Yeah, it seems like some of that work's already done. We looked at it at one point in the recent past when we saw that the amount of activity at the transfer station has been decreasing, hopefully because the recycling has been increasing. And we all have said that the best outcome for this group is really to be out of business at some point, if we can recycle everything. But we were seeing that trend.
Yeah,
and I don't remember when we looked at that, but there should be some of those figures available.
Yeah, some of the long-term sustainability, what's happening if the rates are going down and the expenses, if those could both be laid on top of one another, and then for us to get a good idea, you know, what it's going to look like in 10 years for everybody, you know, they're going to be, if rates are going to need to go up or what, you know, that's something that is an important piece in order to make some decisions today, you know, we need to look down the road.
Okay.
Okay, we'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Right. It's going to be on the agenda for their next meeting.
Oh, okay. And, yeah, if I could, yeah, and I'll maybe pull some information together.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments on that meeting, the subcommittee meeting? Okay. Seeing none, is there any public comments? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Bill Lonsdale. I live in Crescent City. Two observations on the proposal. It's a good one, but I'd like to sound a cautionary note. another member of this board working with that committee may run into a quorum problem. The next thing is, in order for that to be widely accepted when it's finished, the assumptions upon which you make your projection need to be widely accepted because assumptions drive the results. And it's possible that inadvertently the result would get skewed one way or another if not everybody agrees on the assumption. So that might be a good first step. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lonsdale. Any other public comment?
And I would agree
I
with
agree.
Mr. Lonsdale.
I
I
agree.
think just making the request of the committee at our board meeting here makes it okay. You just can't show up to the committee meeting and participate on that.
No, I know I
side.
can't go to those meetings. That's why I brought up the, I've been thinking about it though. And so I just was trying to figure out, you know, what would be something reasonable. And I
Were
don't
there-
mean to throw work on other people, like I'm saying. I could volunteer to put some of this together myself as opposed to, but if someone else wants to do it, that's great. I'm all for it because it is
Well,
time consuming.
probably a request to the committee to take a look at it.
Yep. That's
In
what
that
Okay,
format.
I'll
And
leave
that's
it,
been-
I'll leave it at that then.
Okay. Yes. Do you have another comment?
And I just want to chime in with Mr. Lonsdale's excellent suggestion. We walk very cautiously. I think, you know, not just on this subject, but on a myriad of subjects where, you know, I purposely keep myself away when I know two supervisors are going to be at some place, even though I have a great interest, the hospital being a very good example of last Wednesday's 2x2, that, you know, again, we're going to err, we'll do so on the side of caution, so thank you for that sage reminder.
Yes.
Hi, Elizabeth Henry, county resident. One concern as I see more and more things moving into that committee is that there's no public there. And the information isn't getting out, and some of it is really excellent. I looked at the minutes for the committee meeting, and I mean the graphs, which I'm sure most of the, you know, residents won't see. You know, this one that shows how large the privatization already is of solid waste. You know, a number of other things, and and then if you add another thing, if you're going to look at projections for 10 years, I think you're really getting into a little dangerous ground where the public is not going to be there like they are at these meetings. And I think either you open those meetings to the public, maybe say you can come observe, there's no interaction, but I really think that you've got to have public input at all levels. So I hope you would consider that.
Thank you.
Because if I didn't, you know, get the agenda and look at this, I wouldn't know a lot of this, and I don't think it's dispersed into the community. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes.
Tommy Sparrow with Recology Del Norte.
Yes, go ahead.
We have been requested by the director to make proposals back to the committee as far as reducing rates. And I requested the rate chart from Ted and just give me the ability to change one cell that reflected the complete change through the rate structure, and it was met with resistance. And I would like for this board to direct him to open that one cell.
I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
So, what's going on, Ted? Is there a problem here?
There isn't a problem. The numbers that have been provided are all associated with the contract. And so there's a lot of detail in terms of the computations, and there's always the possibility for error. Part of the process by which we go through when we have rate changes is I develop my spreadsheet. I share those numbers with Tom Sparrow. He shares those with the other Recology folks, and then we agree on what the right numbers are. By sharing the spreadsheet itself, then there's the possibility that errors then get passed on without that double checking. So that was part of the concern.
Well, I know
But the
Recology
numbers are
is
all
a-
in the contract, and they're all very explicit. So I had always presumed that Recology had their own guys working on spreadsheets, and that they had spreadsheets that were developed for their purposes, and we had spreadsheets developed for our purposes. And not every scratch piece of paper is something that becomes a public document. It's a working document, it's a calculation for specific purposes. And when you then start modifying the purposes that those are put to, then sometimes they don't do what you expect.
Okay, I see where you're going at. You're trying to protect the integrity of your spreadsheet.
And that's
You're afraid that
exactly
it's
what I
gonna
wanna
get
do.
compromised. So I'm looking at Mr. Sparrow as a working partner with you, and who I think you need to have certain information. Can you guys work this out where you sit under one roof and you go over this and hash this out? Is it something that's, there's some flexibility?
You know, just forget it. We'll develop our own spreadsheet, and you just take it for what it's worth. What he has and what is available, you just change one number, and the example I gave him, $326 a ton, and there's thousands of rates, and it just changes every rate. Or you go to $25 a ton, and it changes every rate that it's just there. And I can sit there and do the spreadsheet. It just takes hours upon hours upon hours to do it, and it's already done. And all we have to do is unlock one cell, just one cell, unlock it, and everything changes.
Well, solid waste asked for you to do that, right?
Yes.
I would think they
the
would
committee,
supply that. I don't think it's a big secret.
It's
I don't
not a
have any
secret.
problem with them releasing that. I don't know how the other board members feel.
I don't have a problem with it
Do you have an objection to it?
Well, who is solid waste? Who
The
asked for
authority.
the?
The authority asked Recology to relook at their rates. Is that correct?
It's in the minutes.
Administration did, right? Yes.
Not exactly.
I can see that that would save a lot of time.
It would save a huge amount of
Yeah,
time.
so, I don't know.
I think what happened at the meeting was Tommy said, we can change any number you want, we have people that can do that. He implied that he had the spreadsheets and
Okay.
was ready to make those changes. What I pointed out at the meeting was both of their contracts, Recology and Hambro, has a little clause that allows for contractor-initiated cost-saving measures. There's a cost reduction incentive. So it was not so much a request that they do it, but an avenue for them to use if they want to. They're not required to pursue a cost reduction incentive, but their contract does provide for it. They're allowed to do that at their own discretion.
Okay. So they want to do that, but they want that one piece of paper or information. I don't see why we have to withhold that.
I think the consensus of the board, unless
Did you have another-
Holly's voice
Well, no,
it.
we've all said that's
Good.
a
Okay.
major interest that we have is
To
reducing
reducing
consumer
costs.
costs.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm for disclosure.
Okay.
I think it's clear that we're working among interested parties, and I would be in favor of you guys sharing your notes. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. If Tommy, you need something, and I'm thinking, and it's a reasonable request, then Kevin and Ted, I'm of the opinion you should have what you need to derive your own numbers, and vice versa, by the way.
And if this board directs me to give proposals, I will give proposals. There's options out there. And I've invited Mr. Holly.
Well, we'd like to ask you to get it,
Okay,
and we'd like to ask the authority to provide that information.
thank you.
Okay? That's unanimous. Any other public comment?
Is there action on this necessary to do this, or is it just?
No, this was just on the subcommittee.
Very good.
And, you know, to answer Mrs. Henry's question, as a former supervisor, you know that some committees are working committees, which this is, and all this information that you see in our information that's out to the public will all be put into one when it goes back to our main board. So the public will have lots of time or lots of input in what the committee did to discuss the alternatives. So it's an 11-member committee, and so they don't even know when they're going to meet next yet. They'll have to set a date, but there's nothing being kept from the public. These are all, that's why the committee is so big, is to answer a lot of these public questions that's been asked before. So when it comes back to our main board here, that'll be the time that the public can see everything that was discussed, because all these minutes will be available.
Well, and prior to that, there's no action that
There's no
this
action,
committee
no.
can take anyway.
It's just a working
That's why we
committee.
limited it to 2 members of the commission.
Right, it's just a working committee. Let's move on to item 7.2, discussion and possible action regarding the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority's work plan for fiscal year 2013-2014.
In the months leading up to today, we've been primarily focusing on getting a budget adopted, getting a budget approved. It has come up several times over the last few months, people wondering what we do or how we spend our time. So I spent some time with Ted to update the work plan, providing a list of all the things that we have on our plate. This is a flexible document, so if at any point the board wanted to pull anything off or add anything to it, it is guidance for you to understand what we think we're working on, for you to give us feedback on anything that's not on here that you'd like us to be working on, and I think in part to have an appreciation of how much stuff there is that is going on. So we're asking for the board to discuss this. If there's any discussion or if there's any questions, we'll answer questions, and ultimately to adopt this or approve this as a work plan for fiscal 2013-2014 with the acknowledgement that it can be amended at any point in the future.
Board comments? Is there any comments?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going through this document. I appreciate your putting that together. What would be easy to follow? I would ask, I have several different questions, and basically today we went over the storm water reports, and I know there are other mandatory reports that are required by the authority, and what would be nice is if something could be put together that would say exactly what reports are due on an annual basis, on a 5-year basis of the authority, and then in regards to the transfer station and the landfill, what is, again, the mandated obligations for the state, what licenses are required each year, and how often, how necessary, how often do you have to apply for each, how much time does it take for some of these things? I know it's difficult when you're in management, because sometimes in order to keep something moving along, you really only put in a little small amount to pass the ball off to someone else to get them to do stuff, and then they do some work, and then you have to kind of come back and forth. But I had gone back and I pulled up a report that was put together after the last ad hoc, and this was written by Jay Serena. And in the comments, there were several things that were put forward, and that's why I feel this is a really good step towards this. But if I could just read these comments from this report under the staffing, it said that diverse opinions were submitted, and an underlying theme was that insufficient information was provided or information was not provided by the DNSWMA director to sufficiently analyze staffing needs or the staffing structure. So, and this was his analysis. Comments regarding a reluctance to provide the director's daily duties were also received. And this is his analysis right here. A complete desk audit would be essential in determining the adequacy of existing staff and structure. This would be the responsibility of the authority. So again, in going back and reviewing the ad hoc committee, and then looking at the comments that were put together after all of the reports were submitted, this was something that was put forward by our at that time, and I don't believe that it's been followed through. And again, even if I know you guys do a ton of work, and it just seems as if when each meeting is so packed with so many different things, but in order to kind of have a vision of what's coming down the road and what's all required, it would be nice to have a document that would say, you know, what is it that has to be done each year? What's mandated? How much time does it take? You know, what permits, what licenses, and that's something that I see this information in here, but I don't get a good idea how much time it takes. A lot of it, I think probably falls into what Ted does a lot, and what Kevin does is different. So I don't know as far as the structure there. So I see as a draft, I know those are a lot of things a lot of comments.
So the suggestion is to add in discretionary activities a priority to do a desk audit for management at solid waste.
Well, it's never been done, and again, you know, it's the comments. If you go back to the ad hoc, you know, I know Rick McClendon. I was reading. He was wanted to, you know, give an analysis, but he didn't feel that he got all the information that he'd asked for. And Neil Lopez, I'll have to think of some of the different names, and so then he really wasn't able to give what he felt was a real thorough analysis, because he didn't get all the information that he had requested, and it had been asked for on multiple occasions. So again, I think Mr. Serena took all those comments together and put forward this report that he submitted to the Board of Supervisors back in April of 2011, and then it just said in the report, and I don't see that the suggestions were followed through at that point in time. It has different things for staffing as well as bookkeeping, and so anyway, those are my comments.
What's the timeline on deciding on this work plan, Chair Ania? Do you know what's the final vote on this for a work plan?
This is ongoing, Mike.
It's ongoing.
Okay. So can we do this then? My suggestion to add on to what Commissioner Wilson is saying is use this as the rough draft, and then between now and the next meeting, come back with our suggestions of things to add or delete from the work plan.
Okay.
And then from that meeting, we can vote on
Establish
it.
a work plan.
Yeah, from there. So
Well-
the idea of doing a desk audit should be in there.
Okay, and then, but also as far as what's required in, you know, by the state, and, you know, what's mandated. So often these things they're nice, but as a business person in here too, I'd like to see some things, you know,
Well,
that are looked at for cost-cutting measures.
Yeah.
You know, is this going to save the community?
Let me
I don't
help out
see
with
any of
that.
those, a lot of the reports that are in here, but I don't see certain goals that are put forward, so it's a lot of...
There is a symbol here, though, that talks about mandated by state or federal.
Yeah, why don't you take some time to look at it? The first category is entitled mandated or obligatory, ongoing, and future. Those are things we have to do.
Right.
And then there's a second section, perhaps it's not delineated, which are discretionary activities, things that
Once a
we...
year, how often, those
Oh,
things?
I see what you mean.
Huh?
I see what you mean.
Yeah,
Okay,
just
well,
say
we're prepared to talk in detail on any one of these, but I think Commissioner Sullivan's suggestion is prudent.
Okay.
Take time to look at it,
Okay.
come back to the next meeting, and I would just point out that these are items which we have previously received direction on, so anything that's added to this list is not exactly the same as the board giving us direction to do it, if you know what I mean.
No, I think we'd have to vote on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
let's-
you'd want to amend, delete, or add to and approve this, knowing that you could amend it at any future meeting. It's not concrete.
Right.
And second is the important distinction, Mary, is the ad hoc committee was a committee of the Board of Supervisors, which requested information that didn't exist. All the information that existed was provided. You are the board that we work for. So if you decided that it's your priority for us to be spending time on a desk audit, or whatever that is, or whatever that means to you, then that's an action and that's a direction that this board can take, and we would carry that out as per your direction. I would just ask that we have you all be clear on what it is that you're looking for. So if we're going to go through the effort, we give you the details that you're looking for.
Okay. So I would suggest each board member write down what they'd like to see in this work product, work plan, and then we'll come together. When we come together next month, we'll have that for all of us. Okay.
Yeah, I heard the word calendar mentioned, and not all these things require a calendar because you're doing them every day.
Right.
But if you and Ted go off the road, it would be nice to have something someone can look at to know when, and you may already have that internally, but when things are due, and so that someone can walk in. And
We don't ever get in the same car together.
You don't, okay, well then, no problem.
One of those corporate rules. We don't fly together, we don't travel together.
I got you.
We hardly talk to each other in the office.
Yeah. But I can see where the state mandated, state or federal, it's either once a year or twice a year. You talked about one that's twice a year.
And there are some things that are once every 5 years.
Right, we'd like to.
That are coming up that are not necessarily on this plan, but I think Commissioner Wilson's correct to know what's coming down. We have, every 5 years, we need to do an aerial survey of the landfill. That's an expense and it's an effort that we have to do.
Yeah.
There is a expanded constituent testing that we have to do every 5 years, I think.
And there's an expense to that, and I think.
And there's an
that's what the
expense to that as
commissioner's
well.
talking about.
Now, we try to keep those in mind, and Ted
Okay.
has a kind of a master calendar that he uses to keep track of when
Okay.
the stormwater and the semi-annual water reports and all of these things are due. So we have the start of that.
We'll bring that back to you, if we have any suggestions we have.
So do you want us the week before or something to submit this by email or something to compile in one report, or how exactly?
Actually, that would probably be the best, at least maybe, yeah, at least a week to
Okay.
go to Kevin.
Staff to
Yeah,
add in.
just so you have the list.
Just a list of, yeah.
I don't think there's gonna be that many things, so it should work out. Is that all right?
Does it work for you?
Okay. Okay. Any other board comments on this? Any public comment on the work plan for the fiscal year 2013, 2014? Well, it's a work in progress, so we'll be working on that. And our last item is discussion and possible action regarding the annual audit for fiscal year 2011, 2012, as prepared by Smith and Newell. Henrik?
This was carried over from the last agenda at the request of Commissioner Sullivan, and I'm not sure if you had questions or wanted to discuss it, but that's why it's on here.
Okay. Is there any board comments on this audit? So I have a comment. We received this last month, or when did we receive this audit? I know it's dated for last fiscal year. And so now we're in 2013, but did they give this to us a couple months after the fiscal year ended in 2012? I'm trying to remember.
You know, I'm not sure exactly when I got the final on this. It might have been a couple months ago.
Okay. And that's usually how long it takes, 6 months or so?
No, there were some extra complications, which I think you're going to talk about later in this
Oh,
meeting
okay.
that
All right.
caused it to be.
All right, I just didn't remember if we had this late last year when we had our 10-member board.
Yeah, that was my only thought too. We're seeing this now, and if we had a serious issue, that issue would be ongoing for almost a year, so it'd be nice to have it in a more timely way.
Well, I'm guessing, and we'll talk about it later too, but the item on page 6 of the audit, basically regarding the $27,000 missing, it sounds like from some of the future stuff that we have to look at, that hasn't been completely addressed.
Okay.
So
I'll be looking at that.
wait to,
Okay. Any other board comments on this audit this time? Any public comment?
Oh, I have
Oh,
one.
go ahead.
Can we put a requirement on Smith and Newell to get this submitted in a more timely fashion within 90 days after the end of the fiscal year?
I
How
would
how
assume
long,
those
how
on a
long have we had
contract,
them?
we could.
How
What's
long have we had them, Kevin, Smith and Newell? How long have we used them?
I don't know.
2, 3 audits or so?
5, maybe 6.
And usually, do they give it the audit within a few months after the fiscal year expires?
You know, this is the same auditor that works for the county, and I see Clinton Shad is in the audience. He may be able to answer that question for you.
Come on up. I know how difficult it is to get auditors to come up to Delmar County and to do audits.
We just scheduled the
special districts audits today for the end of August. I think they're about the same time every year. So they come at the end of August and do solid waste and the other special districts. So the delay in why this just got here, I think there were some questions in the audit that weren't answered until later, quite a bit later. And
So
so they
normally-
can't finalize until those
So
are answered.
normally, when would you get them? If there wasn't any, delays? When would they put out that product?
The final document would probably come out around, I'd say probably January, February, 6 months. They have to get all the year end in, close the year out, do the audit, submit their questions or findings to the authority in this case. They respond back, they do their final document. The drop dead date to have it submitted to the state is March 31st, I believe.
Oh, I see. So there is a date. It's March. Okay. Yeah, it takes about 9 months.
It takes-
Didn't know what the standard was.
You know, the county, we get ours started in November usually, and ours is done mid-February, beginning of February. So depending on what they find or don't find and how quickly we respond to their questions and findings.
Thank you.
Because it can drag on for months if you don't respond to them in a timely manner.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions of the board? Any public comment on the annual audit for fiscal year 2011, 2012? Okay, seeing none. That's that item. That ends our public discussion, public part of the meeting. We're going to move into closed session now, where we have 2 items to discuss. And so our next scheduled meeting, we have the date for that? August, okay, in August. And thank you for attending this afternoon.